Somewhere beneath the earth, there is a throne meant for a goddess who never asked for it. She was picking flowers in a sunlit meadow when the ground split open beneath her feet. What rose from that crack in the earth was not a monster. It was a god, the god of the dead himself, come to take her whether she agreed to go or not. Her mother would tear the world apart looking for her. The seasons themselves would be born from that grief. And the girl who vanished into the earth that day would return as something else entirely, not a victim, but a queen who rules half of existence. This is the story the Greeks told about the underworld's most powerful goddess, and it does not begin with love, it begins with an abduction. In the oldest surviving version of this myth, the Homeric Hymn to Demeter, composed sometime around the 7th century BC, the story begins with a girl named Persephone, daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, and Zeus, king of the gods. Persephone is gathering flowers in a meadow with a group of nymphs, violets, roses, crocuses, and in the myth's most pointed detail, a narcissus flower planted there deliberately by Zeus to lure her. Because Zeus, the hymn tells us, has already made an arrangement with his brother Hades, lord of the underworld, who has asked for Persephone as his wife. Zeus has agreed. Demeter, the girl's own mother, has not been asked at all. Persephone reaches for the narcissus. The earth opens beneath her. Hades emerges from the chasm in his chariot, pulled by immortal black horses, and seizes her. The hymn does not soften this moment. Persephone screams. She calls out for her father, for help, for anyone, and no one comes. The earth closes back over the meadow as if nothing happened at all. Demeter hears her daughter's cry echo across the mountains and seas, but by the time she searches for its source, Persephone is already gone. For 9 days, the hymn tells us, Demeter wanders the earth without food, without rest, carrying torches, searching every corner of the world for her daughter. No god will tell her what happened, until Hecate, goddess of the crossroads, and finally the sun god Helios, who sees everything from the sky, reveal the truth. Zeus authorized it. Hades has taken her to be his queen. Demeter's grief turns to fury not just at Hades, but at Zeus himself, for trading her daughter away like property in a deal she was never part of. She abandons Olympus. She disguises herself as an old woman and wanders among mortals, and in her rage and sorrow she does something no god had ever done before. She lets the earth die, crops wither. Fields turn to dust, livestock starve. The hymn describes an entire year in which nothing grows anywhere in the world, not because the earth is cursed, but because the goddess of the harvest has simply stopped caring whether humanity survives at all. Mortals begin to starve, and with them dying go the sacrifices and offerings the gods depend on to be worshipped. Zeus realizes too late that he has started a catastrophe he cannot simply command his way out of. Zeus sends messenger after messenger to Demeter, offering gifts, offering honors, offering anything to end the famine. Demeter refuses all of it. She wants only one thing: her daughter returned in full. Finally, Zeus relents. He sends Hermes, messenger of the gods, down into the underworld itself to retrieve Persephone and bring her back to her mother. Hades, according to the hymn, does not fight the order. He agrees to let her go, but before she leaves, he offers her something to eat, a pomegranate, its seeds glistening red. And Persephone, whether from hunger, uncertainty, or something the hymn leaves deliberately unclear, eats a handful of the seeds. It is a trap disguised as a small kindness. In the logic of the ancient Greek underworld, to eat the food of the dead is to become bound to that world forever. When Hermes and Persephone return to the surface, Demeter's joy is immediate and overwhelming, until she learns what her daughter has done. Because now, no matter what anyone wants, Persephone can never be fully free of the underworld again. Zeus is forced to broker a compromise between two furious, grieving parties, who both have legitimate claims to the same young goddess. The terms, as the hymn lays them out: Persephone will spend part of the year with her mother, on the surface among the living, and she will spend the remainder of the year below in the underworld as Hades' wife and queen. The number of months vary between ancient sources, some say a third of the year, others say half, but the mechanism is the same. When Persephone descends to the underworld, Demeter grieves and the earth turns cold and barren. When Persephone rises again, Demeter rejoices and the world blooms back to life. This is how the ancient Greeks explained the seasons themselves, not as an accident of nature, but as the ongoing consequence of a goddess's abduction and a mother's endless grief and relief, repeating itself year after year for eternity. But there's a second half to this story, one the Homeric hymn barely touches, but that later Greek religion built entire cults and mysteries around. What Persephone becomes once she stops being merely a victim of that meadow and starts being a queen of the dead in her own right. In later Greek religious practice, Persephone is not remembered primarily as a girl who was taken. She becomes something far more formidable, a goddess worshipped alongside Hades as a genuine co-ruler of the dead, invoked in curse tablets, funerary inscriptions, and the secretive Eleusinian mysteries, one of the ancient world's most important religious rites, held in her and her mother's honor for nearly 2,000 years. In the underworld itself, later myths show Persephone with real authority, not a passive prisoner, but a queen capable of judgment and mercy. It is Persephone, in some versions of the myth of Orpheus, who is moved by the grieving musician's song and convinces Hades to allow his dead wife Eurydice a chance to return to the living world. It is Persephone who receives the dead, who holds sway over the underworld's most sacred rites, whose name Greek writers were sometimes hesitant to even speak aloud, calling her instead simply the maiden, out of a kind of reverent fear. The girl abducted from a meadow of flowers becomes one of the most quietly powerful figures in the entire Greek pantheon, ruling not by choice, but ruling completely nonetheless. It's worth sitting with how this myth actually begins, because later centuries have often softened it, turning Hades and Persephone into a tragic romance. A misunderstood love story between a lonely god and a girl, who comes to love the underworld she was taken to. That version exists in modern retellings, in poetry, in art, but it isn't where the story starts. The oldest surviving Greek account is unambiguous. Persephone was taken, she screamed. Her mother tore the world apart looking for her. And the compromise that followed was not a romance. It was two furious parents dividing custody of a girl who was never asked what she wanted in the first place. And maybe that's exactly why the myth endured for thousands of years. Not because it was a love story, but because it wasn't. It was a story about grief so powerful it could stop the harvest. About a girl who lost her freedom and centuries later was remembered instead for the authority she came to hold in spite of it. Every spring in the ancient Greek imagination was Demeter's relief. Every winter was her mourning. And somewhere below, ruling beside the god who took her, was a queen the ancient world was almost afraid to name. So do you think later retellings do this myth justice by turning it into a love story, or does something important get lost when we do that? Let me know what you think in the comments.